The importance of trust in democratic systems cannot be understated. As someone reads the news and engages with the media, having a trusting relationship is fundamental so a citizen can be correctly informed. Misinformation and manipulation of the media would break this trust and prevent a body of informed citizens. The severity of this misinformation and disinformation ranges from minor fake news stories to government-constructed propaganda. Across the world, populations who trust the media most of the time vary significantly. Countries such as Finland and Portugal rate some of the highest in this category, while countries like France and the United States are placed among the lowest. The usage of the term fake news has also increased since 2016. A lack of trust between the media's sources and the citizens fuels political divide and polarization. In American history, the founding father John Dickinson used the old phrase, "United we stand, divided we fall." This highlights the issue of trust in the media in modern times. Without the corporation gained from trust, how can we feel united when people don't trust the information that informs them? Concepts of trust have taught us a great deal when understanding the mechanisms that combine trust between individuals and communities. The psychology of trust will first help us understand why we trust in the first place, and how it promotes social cohesion and healthy civic engagement with others. We could adopt the social capital theory, which is the idea that social networks contain value for individuals, which manifests in norms of reciprocity and trustworthiness. When these social networks are tied to political institutions, they become a political matter and not strictly tied to the dependency on individuals, complicating the trustworthiness we get from our social networks. Social capital allows people to support their own interests, but creates stability through said institutions at the same time. Trust becomes the lubricant of civic life. The more mutual trust a community obtains, the more cooperation it has, which allows individuals to build together. For the individual, Erik Erikson considered trust the first task of the ego, which spreads from close relationships to political beliefs. There is an economic value to the importance of trust in society, emphasised by the economist Kenneth Arrows. A consumer trusts that the car he buys is not a lemon, an employer trusts that his new assistant will be dependable, and an investor trusts that the corporate accounts are not cooking the books. There are many perspectives of trust, such as social capital theory and economics. But we can view trust under the definition as a psychological state comprising the intention to accept vulnerability based upon the positive expectations of the intentions or behaviour of another. Under these views, trust is an individual trait that spreads into communities, and that is where cooperation comes from. It is the connecting trait between individuals that brings us together and builds an environment of reciprocity. Researchers study the different ways in which people are exposed to the news, which is separated into two categories, one being traditional news such as television and newspapers. The second source of information is online. People generally find more trust in traditional news sources compared to online news. Researchers point out the differences in how people watch these two types of news. For traditional news sources, people are seeking out an initial goal to be informed. Comparatively, reading news online is sometimes a byproduct of being active online and just stumbling across news articles. However, people don't just watch television just to be informed. Sometimes people will play it in the background as part of their morning routine. The researchers found that a combination of an individual scoring high in political interest, interpersonal trust, and exposure to television news and newspapers would trust the media more. In the case of online news sources, researchers discovered that stories written by computers and not humans are actually rated higher in credibility. So we have to consider the intentions behind the algorithms to advertise specific news when we are online. In terms of social media, friends can play an influential role. If a friend shares news on social media, this can positively affect another friend to see this news in a credible light and engage with the information themselves. Individuals also react in the same way if shared by a political candidate or politician they personally support. This research notes just a few factors that influence our trust in the media. It can be what source we obtain our information from. It could be who is presenting the information to us. It is also down to our motivations for watching the news. All influence in how much we trust the information presented to us. Often, it can seem confusing who we can trust. Politicians constantly discrediting each other's evidence, and media outlets competing with different narratives. The modern world can be portrayed easily to be riddled with false information advertised to the public. Recent events such as the United States presidential election, internal conflicts within the European Union, and the coronavirus pandemic have spawned their own unique channels of fake news. The World Health Organization has stated at times they are also fighting an infodemic. The spread of fake news can be partly put down to its emotional nature. Its linguistic invites emotional responses, which can influence belief regardless of the validity of the news. These fake news articles and titles can target powerful negative emotions and will cause people to spread fake news like wildfire. People's morality being threatened will also cause a further rise in emotional responses. As people try to maintain their moral foundations, if a fake news article falsely puts these foundations under a threat which may not even exist. The evidence does indicate that false information spreads quicker than truthful information. Aside from the emotions, people will share fake news under the influence of political motivation. Political polarization and partisan bias paints an us versus them mindset, and sharing information that supports your own politics or opposing politics you dislike is sometimes motivational enough. It would seem that strong emotional responses and political motivations are the reasons why people may share fake news. Researchers note that there is also an inattention to the content being shared online. To share an article does not demand much energy, so fake news can be spread due to simple carelessness. Cognitive styles also play a part in the sharing of misinformation. For example, open-mindedness was a key factor in negatively predicting belief in coronavirus misinformation. And our memory of seeing one piece of information repeatedly can persuade someone to believe in it more. This is called the illusionary truth effect. Researchers have not just been theoretical, but practical about these issues. Understanding the danger fake news and misinformation poses to trust, researchers have proposed multiple methods of mitigating the risks. Fact-checking is proven to reduce belief in misinformation, but it is difficult when challenging the influence of polarization. Providing people with psychological resources to think about the accuracy of information rather than taking it for face value. Promoting accuracy intervention, such as reminding politicians about their potential reputational losses due to sharing misinformation. Or extreme means, such as removing the individuals that share the misinformation or fake news, or using algorithms to downrate their content. Understanding the psychology is fundamentally important, but the next step is using this political psychology to practically filter out the misinformation, maintaining the bonds of trust between people and their news sources. There are a handful of issues with this research. Participants in these studies have been given subjective definitions of trust, meaning not everyone is measuring information by the same standards. Then there is an over-ambitious mitigation with these studies. Completely removing people from sharing fake news can be a bad thing. We must be careful not to let the argument from authority take over. We should use political psychology as an educational platform and not an authoritarian viewpoint on how to dictate news. To be an informed citizen is not just to seek out the factual information, but to prevent the spread of misinformation. Having an informed body of citizens is important to the basic functionings of a democracy. Otherwise, people's relationship to the political world becomes untrusting, fueling political polarization and partisan bias. People around the world may feel a lack of trust of their media, but political psychology can provide not just theoretical insights, but how we might do something about the fake news. Thank you for watching.